Contemporary World Civilization. Chapter 4, The Western Civilization. This chapter is actually quite loaded, so I again recommend you to first of all look at all the detail in your course book and then watch this video. So first of all, let us start with our learning outcomes. After completing this chapter, what do we aim at achieving? You will be able to first of all recount the origin of Western civilization, because in order to be able to understand the recent Western civilization, we need to go back and look at its origins, and then you will be able to characterize the society of the Western civilization, characterize the common culture of the Western civilization, and then summarize how the infrastructure of Western civilization contributes to the development of world civilizations, because it has huge impact on other civilizations as well. And then finally, you will be able to recognize the major events of the Western civilization. So let us start with its origins. Western civilization began in Europe, and it can be considered as a merger of two cultural zones. The first one is the Judeo-Christian, and the second one is the Greco-Roman cultural zones. In the development of Western civilization, we may talk about the influence of different cultures, such as the Hebrews, because Hebrews developed an awareness of the self or I within their religious perspective of one God religion. So they contributed to the development of moral freedom, which also brought forward the concept of autonomy as the self and the I of the human being. And then the Greeks also contributed much to the idea of political freedom. Their search through the collection of data, kind of scientific collection of data, and the generation of theoretical explanations all contributed to the development of Western civilization. Apart from the Hebrews and Greeks, there is also the influence of the Romans, because they developed the universal principles of common rationality and humanity. And then we see the influence of especially early Christianity, because early Christianity showed us the beginning of the Middle Ages. Middle Ages are also called the Dark Ages, as you know. So all those cultures and early Christianity, let's say, contributed much to the origin of Western civilization. To understand Western civilization, we need to understand those elements as well. When we look at the main events throughout the development of the Western civilization, we see that in the 13th century, the Western, or we may also call it the European civilization, began to advance. And when we come to the 15th century, we see the great voyages of exploration of different parts of the world. And maybe related with this one, we see lots of mechanical inventions. And from this 15th century to the 21st century, Western civilization kind of transferred into global civilization. So when we here look at the complex of Western civilization in the 21st century, we may easily notice that there are different branches of the Western civilization, and each of them contributed greatly in a greater fashion to the development of this civilization. So let's see them. Let's see the major ones which had an influence on Western civilization in general. First of all, the Western Jewish civilization. Jews had an important impact on Western civilization, and there are many ways to define Jews, both politically and culturally. There are some debates around whether to consider Jews as autonomous civilization or to consider them as a kind of fossilized relics of other civilizations. But one way or another, Jewish civilization has existed for several thousand years in a variety of manifestations. So they also constitute an indispensable part of Western civilization as well. And Jewish civilization is even present today in a kind of diaspora worldwide and in Israel. And this civilization forms one part of the wider Western civilization. So Western Jewish civilization surely had an impact on Western civilization. Another important event, let's say, is the rise of Christianity. This is important to understand Western civilization today. And there are some main events within the rise of Christianity. The first one is the Crusades, because those religious wars started in the 11th century and lasted through to the 18th centuries. And these wars actually strengthened the link between the Western Christendom, feudalism, and militarism. That's why those crusades were collected common beliefs around a religious war concept, and it had an influence on the development of Western civilization. The second main concept is the Inquisition. This Inquisition is a judicial institution organized in the 13th century. And as a result of this Inquisition process, many Jews and Muslims were forced to flee to different parts of the world. As a result, it had an influence on the development of and constitution of Western civilization. The third main element that we can consider within the rise of Christianity is the schism. It symbolizes a break in papacy in the 11th century. Before that, papacy had the ultimate power, but then after the 11th century, with the rise of schism, papacy was divided into two main churches, the Roman Catholic Church and the Greek Orthodox Church. Another important element or an event within the rise of Christianity is the Reformation. Within this Reformation concept, we also have to talk about the Renaissance, which is the revival of learning from the 14th to the 17th century. And we see here within the Reformation movement, the Protestant Reformation, and with the leading figure of Martin Luther, and with the rise of the Lutheran ideas, spread of Protestantism to different parts of Europe, the reformist concept influenced the rise of Christianity in a totally different way. As I have said before, that the church was spread into two. The first one is the Roman Catholic Church. It is ruled by kind of semi-divine popes and clergy. On the other hand, with the rise of the reformist movement, we had the Protestant churches. Protestant churches are different from Roman Catholic Church. It had various theology-oriented branches, and it had a different perspective when it's compared to Roman Catholic Church. Let's talk about the civilizing society of the Western civilization. From 14th century to 17th century, we had the Italian Renaissance with new scholarship, and it increased curiosity for beauty and innovation, so contributed much to the culture of Western civilization. And many new lands were discovered in different parts of the world. So it also caused some religious fights. And in the 18th century, we see the Age of Enlightenment. So from 14th to 17th, we had the Italian Renaissance, and the 18th century, we had the Age of Enlightenment. All those important events contributed much to the civilization of this Western civilization. And there are also other main events that contributed to the civilizing society, such as the American Revolution and the French Revolution. Because with the French Revolution, we had the spreading of the ideas of liberty, equality, and fraternity. So those three elements of French Revolution caused many different events and contributed much to the development of the Western civilization. When we look at the education, we may say that Western civilization includes high education rates, and especially the Industrial Revolution in England triggered the rapid development of education in the Western civilization. And education somehow became a kind of route to social mobility and professional careers all through Europe. And when we look at the recent situation of education in the Western civilization, we may see high levels of education, which are also visible when we look at the results of international testing scales. And literacy rate is almost close to a full 100%. How about the government structure that contributed to the civilizing society of the Western civilization? French Revolution had a great influence on the shaping of the governmental structure because there were many independent countries after this revolution. And another main event that contributed to the structure of government in the Western civilization is the First World War. And also the effects of the Great Depression were quite visible because it struck Western civilization in a harsh way. We have the Second World War, and following the Second World War, there is the Cold War period between the West, symbolizing democracy and capitalism, and the East, symbolizing state communism and central planning. And when we look at the other main events, there is the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 and fall of the Soviet Union in 1991. All these main events contributed much to the shaping of the recent governmental structure in the Western civilization today. Western civilization cannot be taught without the European Union. The first roots of the earlier roots of the European Union can be seen in the European Economic Community, which was formed in 1957, and in 1993, the European Union was constituted with a common currency, which was among the 17 nations only, law, European Parliament, European Commission, European Council, and the Court of Justice. And so European Union then expanded to embrace 28 countries and 600 million consumers. So it's a great power today, and European Union is one part of Western civilization. How about the military? In 1949, following the Second World War, NATO, which is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, was formed, and it also contributed much to the developments in military aviation. And there were the times which witnessed the space race between USA and Russia. So the space race, the developments in military aviation contributed much to the civilizing society of the Western civilization. How about its economy? The Western civilization actually has the highest income among all civilizations, with the exception to some oil-rich Arab nations. And how about the quality of life? There is a growing standard of living, and quality of life is quite high, especially due to economic advancement in Cold War years. And there are various cultures and events that affected Western civilization. We can see the reflections of the legacies of different cultures on the Western culture, and you can see and find all the details in your course book about those various legacies. And the civilizing infrastructure of the Western civilization, you can see the effects of the developments within this list on the Western civilization. For instance, the factory system and bureaucracy contributed much to the development of Western civilization, and also had an influence worldwide. Railroads, invention of the steamboats, use of steamboats, post office and telegraph, the financial system, urbanization, bourgeoisie versus proletariat, per capita income, and population growth. all these concepts, all these advancements had a great influence both on the Western civilization and on the other civilizations worldwide. As you see, Western civilization has many elements, many main events, which also influence other civilizations as well. So far in this chapter, what have we done? We have investigated the origin of Western civilization, the society of Western civilization with its many elements, the common culture of the Western civilization, and how the infrastructure of the Western civilization contributes to the development of world civilizations. And I again suggest you to go through this chapter 4 on the Western civilization, because Western civilization includes many things that you need to look into its details. So I wish you good luck.